Okay, hello everyone. Thanks for logging into this podcast. I have Abdul Muiz here with me. Abdul, by background, is a civil engineer. After completing like a BTech in civil engineering, he actually went on to complete a master's as well as structural engineering. But post which he had a pivot in his career where he moved into marketing, taking up various roles across advertising, marketing. Before he went on to join Moshi Moshi Media as part of the social media team and worked there. Had a very successful stint there. Currently, he is a growth manager at Vibrant Scaffolding. So, Mu is very happy to have you here. I think a lot of insights around marketing and your journey, and especially the pivot. I think we'll talk about in detail as well. But yeah, very glad to have you over here. Anything you want to add before we get
I
started?
mean, I'm glad to be here. I really found this very interesting that you somehow searched and found out so much about me. And I was
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean
So
that's
glad
part of
to be a
our
part of this.
research process. So we want to make sure that the best insights are coming from like your specific journey itself, because like you would know best about those things and the moves that you made in your career. Right, awesome. I think let's get started. The first thing we want to obviously talk about is coming from like not just an engineering degree, but a master's at that, right, in civil engineering and in structural engineering, to actually even then get industry experience and then move into marketing, right? So what brought about that shift? And what is that whole process like? And again, we look at and you can just talk about his journey a little bit, and also insights that you would like to share around first exploring opportunities in general. What would you like to tell people, and how they, in your opinion, how should they go about approaching the whole exploration phase? And the second
Right.
thing is just picking up and learning on the go, right? Because I'm sure a lot of it was that for you, because on the job you learned so many different things as part of the exploration process. So yeah, let's hear about it, and let's also hear your insights about these two things after that.
So being from a typical Indian family, my parents decided I would be an engineer or a doctor. But I mean, for the longest part in my life, studied well, decided to do engineering, aced my engineering. And there was that phase where I wanted to join into my master's. And when I was doing that, right, I joined my master's at Oxford College of Engineering. Okay.
Mhm.
Over there, what happened is I see that my college is for half a day and then I have nothing to do while my friends are sitting and working in companies.
Mm.
So a friend's friend recommended me to join this fintech company back then,
Mm.
uh, which was into giving student loans and all of that. Okay, and I just went as an opportunity. Ki, okay, this is like time pass. Like I'll just join over there and see how it goes. But that was kind of like the pivot where I thought of a job career more than just engineering, where I could see that my mom was an artist. Okay.
Mm.
So I feel like that whole aspect of her creativity and mindset, and the fact that my dad's a businessman, so that whole business mindset. So I felt marketing was something that went very natural with me, unlike engineering, where engineering, I was like, I had to learn these formulas, learn these things, and do all of that. But when I was in that fintech company, we were doing crazy stunts,
Mm.
randomly going across colleges, giving people cupcakes, talking to random people, asking them to install an app, convincing a student to take a loan for which they don't even require was a task.
Yeah.
And I would see that there were other people in the team, people struggling for it, and people who were doing it with ease. And I
Mm.
was like, okay, I'm doing this much easily. Why am I not taking this as a career?
Yeah.
Hence the year-long internship
Mm.
while doing my master's. So that was a major pivot where I realized that there are more opportunities over there. And plus, I never heard of people. I heard of people leaving engineering and then going directly into this field where people always make those memes. Ki, oh, you've done engineering, but you're doing these things, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
stealing our jobs.
Yeah.
So I feel like there was a calling for me over there. But then again, my parents being parents, my dad was like, "You will be a structural engineer because structural engineers very respect, very major respect, bro." And I
Yeah.
was like, "Cool." I joined this agency. It was very nice. Like, loved the director working over there. Again, one thing that my director liked about me more than my capabilities of designing a building was the fact that I could market and talk to people and get things sorted,
Yeah.
keeping my clients happy, pitching new businesses, getting big brands onboarded over there as well, like
Mm.
going across for meetings and talking about how we as an agency of structural agency was good.
Mm.
So even though I was in a complete design work, for the first 6 months, I was struggling over there with just doing designs. I was getting very tired, bored, visiting a site. But then my director kind of took notice of that. And he was like, you are going to work more closely with me from now on. The remaining 1.5 year at that agency was a whole shift in my personality and how I would do things. And he gave me an understanding that there are more things than just designing as well, where you are good with so and so things, and that's a skill set that is required for people to be able to communicate and pitch a particular idea forward. So I was like, cool. Understood that somebody is like, you have to have a mix of both. But then I realized ki this mix of both is still something that I wasn't very happy with, because I was still confined to this whole space where I was like, had to work in these small boundaries of like, being like, okay, this is a structural company, this is a construction company. We don't do this, we don't do that.
Yeah.
And I felt like I wanted to try more crazier things, learn more about marketing. I got this whole, I remember just listening or reading this one article on Instagram that I just saw about branding, and I was so attracted to that. And COVID wave hit. I was sitting at home. Structural jobs were not paying well enough. Things were going very bad. Like nothing starting, nothing's happening. I was just working round the clock about one building after another, designing. So then came the whole shift where I was like, okay, I want to leave this right now. The only person supportive at that point for that was my mom. My mom, she had cancer. She recently, like 1 year ago, we lost her.
Oh, I'm so
So
sorry.
yeah, but she was a strong force who did not stick to norms. She was like, I want to do an artist, be an artist, I will be an artist. I want a nice XYZ thing, I will do it in a different way. I will make it happen. She had that kind of an energy with her. And that kind of motivated me also. Ki, when I told this to her, when my dad, my brother, everyone was questioning, ki, you studied so much. Why are you changing this field? She was
Yeah.
the one who kind of pushed me, ki, try it. If
Yeah.
you're good at it, you say that you like it, go for it. Rather be happy than sit and struggle with something that you're not.
Yeah.
Then joined this company. It was nice, learned things over there. Then moved to Moshi Moshi, where, like, overall, this was a summary of my entire journey, like how and what came about. It was all on the go learning.
Yeah.
And there's a very close friend of mine, Hasib, who supported me in this. He's into digital marketing already. So he kind of supported me with that whole thing, where he told me that, you know what, you need to learn. And he's like, you don't need to pay. I was like, okay, do I take courses? Do I learn things? How do I do this? This is going to be so this thing. I don't know about anybody who's doing these kind of things.
Yeah.
So then he kind of told me that there are free tools. Like that guidance was there from my previous director, my mom, my friend Hasib. These guys helped me in getting into marketing overall.
No, that's beautiful, man. I'm so glad you shared your journey, and I think just goes to show it was how it was so accidental to start off with as well, when you found all these gigs and then you really enjoyed it. But also goes to show that regardless of whatever it is, right, and you were in structural engineering for everything, and probably possibly couldn't imagine anything as far away from like creative marketing as we see today. But just goes to show, regardless of what field you're in, I think there's always avenues for you to explore. And you'll always find things that really interest you, and based on that you can then obviously take a leap at a later stage and find other things that you can pursue in that particular field. So that's a great thing. And yeah, I mean, learning on the goals, I think you also covered in that itself, while figuring it out on the spot consistently, right? Like using all the resources and all that. Yeah, I mean, I think that's great. No, it's a great note to start off as well, I think, now that we've spoken about your journey so clearly. Okay, let's do a more deep dive into sort of marketing and strategies and all that, right? And we'll go at the very fundamental level, where just for marketing in general and growth and marketing in general, there's a lot of things that may go wrong at many points of time, and not just because maybe your campaigns aren't executed well enough, but it could just be a bad product at a bad time that you're trying to sell, right? So there are too many factors, too many variable factors in this whole process, especially when you're talking about growth and marketing. So can you recall a couple of instances where one is where it didn't work, things didn't work out, like something in like a campaign or something that you produced didn't work out, and two different contexts. One is when you drafted something fresh, like from scratch, and you built it, but it didn't work out so well. But second is when you pivoted on an existing plan. And again, it didn't work out that well. So let's start off with the first thing, with the drafted things fresh.
Okay, so drafted things fresh was this one brand that we had gotten onboarded, right? So this brand was all into this whole thing in the edtech sector. Okay, so again, that brand was in the industry for quite some time. We had this whole thing mapped out for the brand. I gave them a really nice campaign, how to take this thing forward, different 360-degree approach in terms of your digital and your offline presence, what can be done, how do you build communities around things and all of that. What did not work out is key. The brand purely, completely put its entire effort onto one person over here.
Mm.
So it becomes like a challenge when one person is responsible for managing way too many things. Now, with limited resources, things were being planned out and things were happening. But again, the results that actually were supposed to come out did not come out because of the lack of management and operations that are involved in a campaign. So people, a lot of companies right now, right, they have this whole perception that if they reach out to a particular agency, that's enough for them to handle their marketing.
Mm.
But they need to understand that they also need to have somebody in house to kind of get things floating as well,
Mm.
because you can't survive over just an agency giving you results.
Mm.
You need to have an in-house team who's sitting and monitoring what is my brand guidelines like, what are the things that are happening. Obviously agencies these days are doing a phenomenal job at all these things, okay,
Mm.
but again, somebody in-house is very essential for any brand to understand with what budget, what money goes where, and how things are happening.
Mm.
So a very big example was that campaign where we tried to do the whole thing and it didn't work out.
Mm.
Now coming to a rebranded, like, or a brand that was already existing,
Mm.
and we were trying to revamp its entire year. So a mental health brand had come across.
Mm.
We came across that brand. Again, what happens over there is sometimes brands kind of fail to see the ORM part of it, that the importance of ORM in marketing and everything that you do, sales and building your brand value is always there.
Mm.
So these kind of brands tend to forget that ORM is something that they need to get as an additional service to keep things floating. You might try to revamp things, and then we are trying to build a whole new persona or whole new identity, but your previous issues that you've done or previous problems that were there were not resolved yet to do this whole rebranding activity. So it's important for brands to go back, see what went wrong, what is not working out, and then figure out how to solve that issue, put a pin on it, and then move towards the next stage.
Mm.
Without solving, if you try to move towards the next stage, you're just going to get the same results over there.
Mm.
So these are things that I had to learn on the go. But yeah, it obviously clients were not happy, the brand was not happy, but
Yeah.
it's learnings as well for me,
Mm.
because most of my learnings have been through doing things across like that.
Got
But
it.
this is something that's how it's there.
Yeah. Could you just simplify and break down ORM for us that you mentioned that the brand needed to look at?
See, ORMs, like for example, there are things that happen on the Instagram, the comments that come across, what all things are happening. People are sitting and spamming you with all these messages. There
Mm.
are customers who are, dissatisfied on a whole new level.
Mm.
They were constantly, like, even after months together, if they are coming back to you, that means there was something that went wrong.
Mm.
Either you sit, address, resolve, and then take it forward,
Mm.
get that same customer on board, and
Mm.
let him talk about how, yes, they fucked up, they did something.
Mm.
Sorry, I mean, that just
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah.
so they did that, but then they also sat and helped me resolve things. It's
Mm.
like mending relationships. In the end, when you talk about any company or anything, right, they always talk about branding and building a brand personality.
Mm.
Now, if your personality, you're basically humanizing a brand, right?
Mm.
Now, if as humans, we need to also understand that we need to, there are issues and things that happen, and you need to resolve or mend those things. If we
Mm.
are not doing that, I think it doesn't work out.
Mm.
So we need to understand that that needs to be done. So basic ORM should be handled, replying to messages, any grievances,
Mm.
channelizing that grievance to a particular email so that a person knows how
Mm.
things are happening. So these basics need to be covered across so that that resolves their issues.
Hmm. Got it. Yeah. Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense, right? Because without addressing those things and not having that basic level of customer experience that you're providing, then you shouldn't really worry too much about campaigns and new plans and some creative stuff that you're going to do after that, because, well, it's not really going to give you results anyway if those
Exactly.
things are not addressed. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay, so next let's look at entering the field of marketing more from the perspective of someone who is starting out or is looking for a place to work at, right? So when again with the field, you have to, I think, be very selective, be very careful with the kind of experiences that you're picking up, because you want to learn the right things and you want
Yeah.
to narrow down and focus on a particular career while not also working for companies that possibly won't give you such great growth, especially very early on in your career, right? So I think you also started with small scale brands and
Exactly.
eventually climbed up to like a much more organized setup, right? So what do you have to say for someone who's starting out in terms of one, a choosing the right workplace, and what are some parameters you can assess to find out that, okay, this is probably a good place for me to work at? And second thing is, what are and this is again based on the previous thing that you said about the mental health client that you had, right? Understanding when a project is turning a little toxic, right? And ensuring that you are doing some sort of a risk analysis when you're actually working, and you can call out things much earlier, right? So yeah, we'll start off with the choosing the right workplace. Second thing is we'll talk about on the job and what you can do.
So again, before you even choose the right workplace, current scenario is all about people with their degrees. Obviously, regardless of whatever degrees do matter. I could not get into a lot of agencies earlier because of my master's in structures.
Hmm.
It did not make sense. My internship of 1 year was something that people disregarded because they were like, you were just doing it probably for the money.
Hmm.
So again, it's all about understanding that you need to choose the right place to start off with. The
Hmm.
first thing that I was looking at that point was the kind of place that has, like, is a startup,
Hmm.
because I am fresh, a new person in this industry. I need to learn a lot more things, and also the place that I'm looking at should also be in that phase where they are also accepting to learn things on the go.
Yeah.
So that is one thing. So then I came across an agency, a small budding agency, where they were kind of handling a lot of small, medium businesses.
Mhm.
Now, their whole approach, when everybody else is sitting and targeting getting the most biggest clients, highest paying clients, they were working with clients with minimal budgets. And
Hmm.
this was during COVID, which made a lot of sense because they were getting a lot of small scale customers, like somebody who runs a small computer shop, to different things. Where I was getting to work on an agarbatti brand where we did a whole branding project.
Hmm.
I was working simultaneously on an interior designing project
Hmm.
that was into website revamping and all of those things. Simultaneously, I got to work with another company which was into construction materials, where I did their Google ads and all of those things.
Hmm.
So for me, it was being able to learn on the go on multiple things. Now,
Hmm.
when I talk about entering a new field, I wanted to make sure that I was available to try to explore everything over there. I
Hmm.
wasn't even sure at that point that I was good at social media.
Hmm.
I was like, I entered digital marketing thinking I will become those Google ads and Facebook ads. This is what I'm gonna do. This is my business. I will show revenue like that. And at that point, I thought ki performance marketeers are the ones who kind of get that whole praise or whatever. So I was like, no, no, ye nahi hoga. I cannot do social media and all that. But then I learned there's a flair to social media.
Hmm.
There's a 360-degree tie-up with branding, with the ads. Communication is the main thing.
Hmm.
So I would suggest people look at places where you can learn,
Hmm.
see there is growth, see that you get to, you're not sitting on one simple thing. You need to also look at how you can do multiple things and see which is where do you shine out the best,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then decide ki, this is where I need to go. And obviously that learning, that experience is going to be the next, the work that you do there will help you jump into the next place. And
Yeah.
that's how I went into Moshi Moshi from there.
Hmm.
So working over there, learning things, I'm very thankful to all the learnings that I've done with so many small brands and businesses, that I was able to jump into Moshi Moshi. So that should be the first thing with regards to how people need to choose the right workplace.
Hmm.
Now coming to the toxic or the risk analysis that needs to be done for clients, right? There are certain things. It's always that first call with your client is where you understand that person's personality. There's psychology behind. After meeting multiple people, you kind of understand. There's a person who's that extra sweet, and then suddenly you see that gradual shift in behavior, wherein that person's like, oh, this is not achieved. Why is this? What is this happening?
Yeah.
So that is there. So first thing is trying to keep respectful boundaries, making sure that there's these KRA KPIs or objectives that are well defined.
Mm.
You can't start any work without having your KRA KPIs defined, and you work on a unified goal. Ki, I need to achieve these targets.
Mm.
Targets are something that most people tend to forget while working.
Mm.
They have like a very ambiguous target. Ki, end of the month, I've sent you one report. No, that is my report. This is the result.
Yeah.
But that's not how it works. You need to kind of plan things through. Because clients come with expectations. Now, when the client comes saying, Ki, I just started my Instagram account, I want 50,000 followers in the end of this month.
Yeah.
That's not something that can be done without set budgets, set things, and everything.
Mm.
So then you sit and talk to the client, make them understand what the realistic goals are based on the expenses and budgets that they're currently giving us. So that is how we kind of get things forward with them.
Mm. Yeah.
So that would mainly any client, no client is toxic. Every business is just trying to get those numbers.
Yeah.
Once you know those numbers, what is it that they're trying to achieve, then you kind of pivot.
Yeah.
Then special cases is when there are issues like this where the client is not ready to understand that we need to resolve issues. So
Yeah.
that is the only thing where you can't do much on those cases.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, I mean, I'm very glad you brought that up, and I think just to like share, you took me right back to I think one of previously when I was working at a IT services firm as well. One of my first projects that I was handling solo that I got to handle solo, right? And so much about assessing the client's personality on the first call, plus those targets and these expectations. My company and the team associated at that time, for some reason the communication wasn't that great. So when I stepped in, suddenly it was completely up to me to sort of work with that person and understand, okay, this is what he wants right now, which is not what I was told at all by my own company, right? So just thinking about that, I just wanted to like share that a little bit as well about how important it becomes to sort of just have those, put everything out on paper or on call and just clear everything out before you even start working with the client. So I think that's why it becomes so important. I'm very glad that you shared that. I mean, I think later on, if it gets really bad, then I don't think any amount of risk analysis will help. You'll just need
I
more
think
people.
that equation's just spoiled. You can't. Some
Yeah,
things no. When once it's spoiled, you can't do anything much about it.
yeah, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Okay, we'll stay on the same topic. And another thing that we want to understand is in your own journey as well, that you've seen how working with smaller agencies to start off and gaining that experience to then going and working for a prestigious brand like Moshi Moshi, which is, I'm sure the processes are a lot more defined and a lot more established, right? In a sense. So, what differences are there in terms of like a much smaller company, much smaller marketing agency versus like a big established agency in terms of one, how do the pre-sales and sales processes evolve in terms of getting new clients, client acquisition, that side of things? And second is, what are things that prestigious brands do in terms of defining an engagement and setting these KPIs, right? So how does this vary and how important does it? Because I think it's very insightful people who are just starting out in the field to know that, okay, this is where they want to get to, this is what their workplace should get to at some point, right? And I mean, we covered a bit of it earlier, but to go in detail. So let's start off with talking about the pre-sales sales processes.
So what you would the main difference that you will see over here is the organizing part of it. Okay. When it comes to small scale businesses, you're just running around getting leads, you're talking to people, trying to do whatever to convert them. But when you come to big agencies, there is a proper set structure. There are calls or iterations. There is the kind of pitch that needs to go across. Here with smaller agencies, it's all about trust factor ki maine tumhe portfolio, I've shown you one particular portfolio and you're convinced on it and you come to me because again, there is the fact that the pay or whatever the money involved is a bit lower,
Yeah.
to be honest.
Yeah.
Now, when you move to a professional agency, people always have this thing ki when I go to a big agency, the money is a lot more, but they fail to see the value that the big agency adds. Now to convince a lot of businesses on the value addition aspect, right? Big companies have cracked that whole structure. Key first, we need to showcase the work, what is happening.
Mm.
We need to showcase what we've done earlier, establish that particular connect. Then we talk about, then there is a pitch that needs to be presented. If there is an X brand coming in a particular X industry, there's always a strategist who prepares a very nice docket, entire presentation. Key, this is what we will take you from here to here. This is
Mm.
where your brand looks like. This is where we will take it. So that vision needs to be sold.
Mm.
So that's how the sales process is a lot more different, because you are voluntarily entering into a ecosystem, into an agency wherein you know that this is where the plan is taking forward. And
Mm.
it kind of helps businesses also assess and understand which agency to go with, because
Mm.
every brand has a vision of its own.
Mm.
Every agency or every team that they get to work with, everyone pitches it a different way.
Mm.
Everybody has different things that they want to sell.
Mm.
But it's the approach that matters the most. What
Mm.
approach fits with my brand? And with Moshi Moshi, what I like is the company challenges a lot of norms. It's creative, it's out of the box thinking,
Mm.
young energetic founders who are kind of building these things, people in the team. You enter into that space, the agency culture is never something that's dead or like silent and quiet. It's all everyone hushing, bushing, doing a lot of things together.
Mm.
So you will understand that that's the difference that comes across,
Mm.
how you the creativity in what you put across. So
Mm.
that's how pre-sales and sales, that's the whole thing that happens. It's how you kind of connect and share that vision
Yeah.
that your brand has before it even gets onboarded.
Yeah.
Builds the trust factor.
Yeah, and I think it makes a lot of sense also, right? Because maybe another aspect also is that when as a much bigger brand, when you're when you are establishing this sales process of yourself, the kind of clients that you're working with also are working with much bigger budgets, and when that happens, they are also extremely they want to do their due diligence really well, and they want to pick the best possible agency to sort of give the work to, regardless of the cost, right? And I think at that time, like you said, the approach and all that, and what you need to show as the kind of approach that you will take as an agency matters so much over here. So yeah, I think that's a very insightful point. Yeah, let's talk about later in the stage where deals are converted and the sales process kind of concludes, or pre-sales process at least concludes. And now that the agreement and the engagement kicks off, what are some things that bigger agencies do in terms of defining a clearer scope of work, defining an engagement, defining better KPIs, as opposed to, like, let's say, smaller companies?
So with smaller agencies, the KPIs or the scope of work is very predefined. They understand what they can provide and they'll do that much only.
Mhm.
Now with larger agencies, what happens is, considering that they have the bandwidth or the resources, right? It's a lot more in terms of need basis.
Mm.
Do I need to do this video right now? Do I need to shoot a brand video? Do I need to make these kind of content pieces? How many posts are required? How many stories are required? All these things are kind of pre-planned in terms of ads, what kind of ad creators. All these things are like planned or understood based on need.
Mm.
And according to that, there is that thing which will be accommodated into the whole scope.
Mm.
So that is the major difference, like between a small scale agency and a larger agency, that this is how we'll kind of differentiate the entire thing.
Mm.
And then with targets are always assessed, kept in mind. We will tell them, with the experience that bigger agencies have with handling multiple brands in similar niches or different niches, and understanding the entire shift in the digital scope, what all keeps happening.
Mm.
There are set realistic targets, obviously wanting to achieve the highest.
Mm.
So with those expectations kept in mind with the client, we try to achieve on a unanimous goal ki hame yahan pe pahunchna hai. So
Mm.
everyone kind of works towards that one direction. So I think that makes working with bigger agencies a lot more better
Mm.
for the employees over there and for the clients.
Got it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about social media right now, and more specifically in the context of startups, right? So you would have worked with a lot of startups in terms of developing their campaigns, developing all sorts of marketing activities for them. So for a startup, I think specifically there's a lot of balancing that they need to do between, like, the branding aspects, like the virality, bringing in like influencers over there, also focusing on the sales because that's also extremely important, right? So when you're developing social media strategies for startups specifically, how do you balance between like the branding side of things to just sort of give a voice, like you said, right, and bring it to life in a way, and sales, right, and focusing on like more of the performance side of things. So what's the balance between like these two things, branding and sales? And the second thing is engagement, consistent engagement of audience. Well, that is very important, and virality. Like, at what elements do you introduce that some element of virality needs to be there for your product to really kick off and find a target audience, right? So we'll talk about that later, but first let's talk about branding and sales and like the balance between that.
Yeah, so basically, there is every brand has this whole phase. Like there's a funnel, there's awareness, consideration, conversion. Basics, every digital marketing course that you go, that's what they're going to teach you first. That these are your three conversion stages. But again, you need to understand what work needs to be done when. If a startup or any company is coming across, we need clear expectations set to the client that your first quarter is completely about creating that awareness. Awareness, which will, the top line objective will be awareness, but the bottom line objective is always to convert these people who are aware about your product to final conversion needs to happen over there. That miss should not be there between your campaigns or the thoughts that you put across. Now, awareness, again, there are multiple channels. So when we are planning a brand launch, right? A brand comes to us saying, I'm a new company, I'm a brand, I need to launch myself in the market. Apart from just social media, on social media, which platforms does this brand have to go active? Does this brand, what is the brand's tone and voice? How do I bring that personality of it over there? Because if I am looking at a platform like Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Facebook kind of dead for the past few days, but Instagram and Twitter, when I'm looking at over there, right? You see that brands are owning their personality on these platforms. There are brands who are talking about, like Met Gala ke bare mein yesterday Zomato put a very nice creative post. Back then, people were not even thinking about doing stuff like this.
Yeah.
It's all about owning your personality. Making Zomato has done that in a very good way, I would say. Multiple other brands are also doing it in that way. When it comes to new budding brands, right? It's that personality and that connect. Once your audience starts connecting to your personality, your awareness automatically starts driving. Once your awareness is driven, it automatically becomes to people becoming your brand advocates. They're sharing your content, your engagement is increasing. So all of that is happening, which will eventually even convert to sales. So owning or building the personality of a brand on the right platform is important. Coming to other platforms, when I'm launching LinkedIn, for example. So most startups, most people, they will have those investment rounds, right? So for the next round of investment, when they're going across, they will have to achieve a set target numbers and all of that. Now to do that, they need to build some base. So all that base will have to be also presented across in a nice way. So we usually kind of use LinkedIn as a platform to showcase that brand as an expert in that particular industry. We kind of also do this whole thing where we tell users about the growth of the company, where we are currently, what is happening. So all these kind of things will be taken across on the LinkedIn platform. So any brand launch is not just social, but it's a 360-degree launch that needs to be looked into. How do I do it offline? Is it just a newspaper jacket, a jacket ad that needs to be put across? Or am I looking at doing a very big hoarding? Or am I looking at getting fun things like Vox Pop done on streets? So, which is currently like the whole new trend in Bangalore. If you see, people have created Instagram channels about Vox Pops.
Yeah.
So it's all about being in trend, talking to people in that whole thing. It's 360-degree launch, but main thing, own the personality of the brand, build itself.
Got it.
Because you have spent money on a brand book where there's a very nice personality given ki, oh, this is Anne Hathaway, oh, this is this so and so particular way, Tara, multiple things that come across. But is the brand really talking like that?
Yeah.
We need to kind of define and put across.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Let's talk about virality more as a concept, right? And how much of it is sort of planned when you're developing some sort of a strategy, and weighed against like contextual engagement of the audience that you need to be doing when the strategy, when the followers that you get and engaging with them, right? And then introducing this element of virality and how much does that play a part essentially?
So basically, we need to look at marketing as I kind of like this to consider viral campaigns as a non-linear jump in
Mm,
your goals and targets, right? So for example, I have like an X budget. I've been doing these posts, these things. I can kind of map out key to increase my engagement or reach. I increase these many posts. I do these many reels. It will automatically increase my reach and impressions.
mm,
When I am looking at a viral campaign, I am looking at creating something that is different, very out of the blue, things that involve certain things which are not accepted very easily in the market and stuff like that.
mm,
So one such campaign was done at Moshi Moshi, where we did this whole campaign called Short Term Needs.
mm,
I think even right now, if you go through Lal Bagh or somewhere, there are these spray painted walls which
mm,
says for your short term needs, call zero pay.
mm,
So this was a campaign that was the whole team worked on it. It was a very beautifully done, beautifully planned through campaign.
mm,
Now, what was the results of this? It was obviously a non-linear jump again in terms of the reach, the impressions, the kind of installs that we were looking at that point for the app, and all those other things, website traffic, multiple things did come up because of that one particular campaign. Again, there are multiple things that go into planning such things. A viral campaign is not something that can just be done on one base point. You need to look at how do I take this? And there is a lot of planning. Like I might do something at one particular place, but how do I get it to make it seem like it's done like on a big scale, like it's a big thing?
mm,
There are ways to kind of do meme marketing, multiple meme channels, get influencers over there, get people to start talking about it, take posts, curate content, put it across on LinkedIn, get a kind of banter created around the whole communication.
mm,
So all these aspects are there with regards to virality. Get cross branding done. Other brands are coming and talking on you on your page.
mm.
If that can be achieved, that's also amazing. So these kind of things together implement into a long term result of these inorganic viral campaigns.
Mm.
Yeah.
Got it.
So
Let's do a deep dive into this. I'm very glad that you mentioned these campaigns, right? And you pulled out quite a few of those during in Moshi Moshi, and I think Zero Pay being like one of those clients where
yeah.
some of these campaigns were taken out. So when you're doing this, whether it's offline, online, regardless of the channel that it's being executed on, what is the process in sort of executing this, keeping in mind the purpose being served? In which case, whether it is more brand awareness, whether it is driving more sales specifically, or whatever stage of the funnel that you want to target, right? So, how do you essentially design a campaign keeping like the end goal in mind, right? The end purpose in mind. That's the one thing. And we're talking about like these viral campaigns over here itself. And the second thing is an interesting one, which is how do you do this while facing minimal backlash? Because it involves a lot of like societal elements that you're talking about, and some of the things that you talk about may offend some people, I guess, in some ways. But regardless of that, there might be some backlash here and there from like specific communities or specific sets of people. So how do you
Yeah.
manage that? How do you ensure that there is very minimal backlash when doing this? We'll start with talking about the purpose being served.
So with regards to the purpose or how any campaign execution and thought is being planned out, right? So we guys are huh. So we guys are looking at when we're planning a particular campaign, a client is asking us to do a viral campaign. They want us to go 360 degree with their approach. There are certain base level things to understand. What am I trying to communicate? First thing is the communication, the key factor that we want to put across. So that needs to be communicated effectively or viral. The viral thing that people always talk about at the end is that communication aspect. What am I talking about? How is this relevant to me? And it should be something that's not complex. It's something as simple as just a single line, a single phrase that everybody uses in their day-to-day lives.
Mm,
So simplifying that where it's like easier for people to remember or recall the whole line. That's first key. Second thing is the planning aspect. There are the, before any such viral campaigns, it's sleepless nights
mm,
for at least a period of 1 month, because there are multiple touch points. You're looking at if I'm doing offline execution, if I'm doing online execution, if I'm doing influencers, if I'm doing meme pages, reaching out to all these people, talking to them, getting commercials, talking about budgets, how do I plan everything? All of that needs to be there in that whole execution phase, where you need to understand that this is what I'm trying to achieve at the end of the day. If
mm,
my goal is to try to get leads, I will send them to a landing page or a website. If my goal is just awareness, I will just somehow plug in my brand's logo or my brand tagline so that people remember my brand. And eventually, there is another phase that usually comes, which kind of carry forwards for them to connect that whole tagline to the brand again, or somehow bring that whole approach where you put across ads and then get them to understand, oh, this is the brand that I'm looking at. So on a larger spectrum, it's going into seeing like on a larger macroscopic level ki kahan pe jana hai mujhe, what am I trying to achieve, and then phasing everything on a microscopic level into terms of things that I need to be doing. And who am I targeting? I cannot be doing a radio ad when I'm trying to talk to the Gen Z audience. Radios will not work there. So different things come into picture when you're doing all these things together. So end collaboration, it's always a team effort. It's not one person working on any viral campaign. It's a whole team who's not slept for a lot of nights and has been just working on getting this to, perfection or results. Then with regards to the whole thing which you said, backlash, yes. So there is always this one meeting during any campaign such thought. What backlash can happen? So this is basically taking the whole team, the entire fucking team of marketing is sitting and everyone's like, so this is my idea, guys. What do you think can happen? And which of this is okay for me to have? What is the worst that you can think that people might say? And kind of planning through that, it's always better to ask people around, see different opinions, see what can work out. Simplest things, like I remember going back home with the whole campaign of Zero Pay that we were doing, and I was like, this is the idea. First thing, are you going to be selling these? Like, those condom packets. And then I was like, no, I mean, like, I'm not selling them. I'm giving them for free. And then he's like, why are you giving these things? What are you promoting in India? What is this? Bangalore, you're ruining the name. And I was like, see, there is a whole different thought which was put across that, it was a very, very beautifully, I think this was being, the concept note altogether was by Aman and Swati from Moshi Moshi. So very beautifully done with the whole short-term needs, connecting that whole BNPL industry to short-term needs was there. So it was a very nice whole pitch that was put across. Because buy now, pay later is for those short, they only give very little small amounts of loans. Connecting that to something that as simple as a short-term need. And building that whole communication thought where people kept asking the us ki aapne condom diye the na, wo ye wala brand ne condom diye the. So it was always something like that. It was fun, it was interesting, it was amazing. But yes, we did have certain people, creating a banter ki what kind of marketing tactic and stuff like that. But that still led to a lot of people visiting our website. So at the end, it's just understanding that there's a whole risk analysis done before any campaign is launched. So that risk analysis is always essential to know if this is something that we can float, and then having the right kind of resources to backtrack and like resolve those banters. So that is also always required.
Perfect. I mean, I'm very glad you shared like behind the scenes of what happens. Like I was also picturing like a full conference room where like everyone's just coming in together and sitting and everyone's just, oh, okay, what can go wrong? What can people think about if I'm executing this? So it's like nice picture that you painted of that, and good to know what happens behind the scenes of some of these good campaigns that we see. Okay, awesome. Let's talk about influencers and influencer marketing next, something that's become extremely popular, not just like the rise of social media, but in general, the rise of influencers as well, and how much the trust has sort of moved from the celebrities that you see on TV and like Amitabh Bachchan doing an ad versus now you probably trust that influencer that you follow and consume content. You probably like them a lot more when they're promoting a particular product, and you're more likely to buy it, right? So it's been a very interesting shift. So when you look at for a company to find influencers to sort of if it's like an app-based business, let's say, right, and you have to, and they're getting influencers to sort of come on board and talk about their product and all of that. So what is the process in terms of finding the right influencers? Like that's one thing, and in terms of like contextual to what you are trying to do, that's one thing. And the second thing is structuring the content, and how does that happen? Because I'm sure there's a lot of campaigns planning that happens there. It's not as simple as like what used to happen on TV where Amitabh Bachchan's coming with like a Kamla Pasand or something in his hand and just saying, go eat this, right? So we'll look at that side of things. First, let's talk about finding the right influencers.
Now, with regards to finding the right influencers, right? So understanding the fact that, influencers have become like a integral part of your day-to-day life. You follow certain influencers, you consume their content because they've become home to a lot of people right now.
Yeah.
You see that person as a person that you a friend that you've spoken to during the day, or a friend who's telling you their entire thing.
Yeah.
Now, understanding who is right for which particular brand of yours is the key first to begin with. I cannot be a brand which is about fashion and lifestyle, and I am targeting a lot of influencers who are in automobile sector.
Mm.
So I need to understand the kind of TG that I'm looking at. People who will consume my content, people who are more likely to be involved with us. So understanding that is the first key. Then choosing the right segment, then in that getting the whole list of influencers, and then seeing certain metrics. For example, you look at the average likes that an influencer gets on their pay or on their post, average comments that they get. You look at the engagement rate that is currently there on their page. Engagement rate is basically your sum of total engagement by the followers, because we can't see the impressions or reach. We kind of assess them based on the following that they are currently having, and the total views, video views that I'm getting right now. So on these metrics, I kind of basic filters that are there. First filter is your look at the niche, which influencer category that you're segmenting. In that niche, get a list of influencers. Then you look at all these parameters like engagement, likes, average comments, and average reach. What is the, if you're getting a reel done? So this kind of helps you understand that I'm spending X amount on an influencer and I'm getting these results. Approximately, I'm expecting this. And that way, my campaign thought is key. Overall, I want to reach through influencer marketing X reach, like these many thousands ka reach, or 1 lakh, 5 lakh reach. So that needs to be justified with the influencers that I choose across. So this is one of the ways that we kind of do. And then finally, there is an entire thing seeing after all of this is done. Is this somebody who fits in my brand personality or brand category? Is this understand that will my brand, I am a particular person who has particular type of friends, right? Your brand also should be tying up with influencers who are kind of like you, or you relate to those people. So that needs to kind of come across, because that is the only way where the influencer, instead of just looking at the money that they're getting, will also try to kind of relate to the brand and create content which comes out very well. So that is key. And I think current trend in the market is something that people don't like very salesy or direct salesy content. They want to be eased into the communication. So coming to the communication part of it, we need to understand that we can't tell an influencer, this is my brand, you need to talk like this only. Bro, that will never work out. There is a reason why Danish Seth is Danish Seth. He's built himself like that. There's a reason why Jord Indian work as Jord Indian. They've built themselves like that. So when it comes to their entire channel, right, I'm asking them to talk about me. I will not tell them to change themselves for me, right? Because that doesn't make sense. So you need to kind of understand that there's a fine line between how an influencer talks and what we want to communicate. So there is always a whole balance that is given. We give them guidelines. We don't want XX things to happen. We don't want these things to be done. But we don't tell them or dictate narratives this is how you will talk. You will sit in front of a camera, you will talk about us. No. They have to be more engaging, build their own reach in ways that they usually would do a regular reel. Because at the end of the day, it's their platform, their particular channel, and their reach that will get compromised if I mess with their algorithm of how they've gotten where they are. So it's very essential to make sure it's a balance between brand's communication and the influencer's communication. So I think that kind of answers the
for sure. I think, and I was just picturing like a couple of good cases where it has been implemented, right? And I think throughout for both of these points, I was thinking about was what Jupiter did with getting finance with Sharan and the kind of reels that he keeps putting for Jupiter, right, again and again. And I think that's like one of the most perfect integrations I've seen, like a product influencer integration.
Exactly.
Perfectly his content and being completely on the lines of his content, while also the right audience for both Jupiter and him have the almost exact same set TG for both of them. And yeah, I mean, the messaging also in general, right? So I think, yeah, I was just picturing that example when you were thinking about it. So yeah, that's very interesting. Okay, well, I think we covered influencer marketing also. Let's talk about offline now, and this is something that was there, like obviously, the traditional means of marketing and advertising, and continues to thrive as opposed to what a lot of people would say, I'm sure. Right.
Yeah.
So, how do you approach an offline marketing campaign strictly? One is in terms of measuring performance, because I think it becomes a little more harder when you can't redirect people, and it's not such a funneled approach that you can take when you're talking about offline, right? So, measuring performance is one thing, and how do you go about that? Second thing is analyzing different channels, right, that is available to you and deciding on the best one. What is that process also looking like? Let's talk about measuring performance.
Now, and so with regards to offline, right, I think COVID was the best example of how online and offline, like offline has its own value, online has its own value. I really believe that, there's a proper mix of both that is required, rather than people who just focus on offline and just focus on only online. There's a proper balance that needs to be figured out. I might be a company which is like hyper local. It's a mix of maybe like 70% or 60% offline marketing and 40 to 30% online digital marketing, what needs to go across. So that balance needs to be something that needs to be curated between brands. Now, when I'm doing an offline campaign, there are certain set things that need to be like, there are certain things that are done. There are in terms of your hoarding, there are in terms of like, flyer distribution, there are offline activities that you can do to kind of engage audience and all of that. Those campaigns are something that, again, where am I getting my results? What am I showcasing? Is that even being, who knows that I did this? And that is the reason why you need to have online as well. You do what you do offline, take it across to the online platform, and build the engagement, the entire thing. You get results you can quantify with this. When I'm doing a purely offline campaign, it depends on my lead person or the salesperson going over there and then getting me the data that these many people have gotten. And back then, I remember people telling me stories where they're just filling random numbers, random things, and being like, "Oh, people just gave us these things." This
Yeah.
was something that actually used to happen, and we can't control that. Environment cannot be controlled. Apart from the fact that people might have seen my flyers and everything, there is that whole awareness ki, I remember once there was fruit chill that was always parked outside my college. Every day fruit chill was parked. I was like, okay, fruit chill, now I know that as a brand. Till date, I remember it.
Yeah.
So that is the impact of offline, but the brand doesn't know that I still remember it.
Yeah.
So there is no quantifiable way where you can assess it apart from awareness over there and direct sales which come across at that point. Now, when it comes to an offline and online mix, right, it kind of has like that whole balance between what am I doing, how is this being across, and even if I'm doing one action at one place, I'm kind of branching it out and showing it to multiple people that I did this. My reach is increasing, rather than my reach of maybe like 1,000 people that I engaged over there, 10,000 people are seeing, 10x people get to know that I did so and so activity. So that is the whole thing in terms of awareness and creating all these things that can go across. So I would say offline, I would preferably not just do offline campaigns.
Yeah.
I would do a mix of both. A more integrated approach is what I prefer. Then, with regards to analyzing the channels, so even with integrated marketing approaches that I've done, right, there were certain times where I've come across points where I realized that this particular channel is where I'm not getting anything out of it. Like I'm just getting traffic. Maybe I'm not getting people to visit my website. I'm only getting social media pay. Nobody is coming back to my website from there. Nobody is going to my product pages. What is missing out? So I'm gonna stop investing my time seeing that consecutively over 2 quarters I'm not getting results. This channel has not delivered any kind of results in terms of reach, awareness, engagement. At least none of these are coming across. Nobody is going to my website from this channel. It's then when I decide it's time for me to move on to a new channel where I kind of put my efforts over there to build that across. So it's always like data oriented approach, because what might work for one particular brand will not work for the other brand. So it's all about data and analyzing that data across platforms. So then you can kind of take the right call.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I think you mentioned a very interesting thing that, and I want to come back to that later about just marketing and the role of data in that. But before that, to start off, stay on the topic and explore different things in the domain. Another thing that's gaining a lot of popularity right now is video commercials, right? And DVC ads, and all the things that brands are doing to create good video content while being online and not traditional advertising. So, in terms of like a video commercial and how do you go about it? One is in terms of what do you do in the planning process when it comes to the copy and the content and the messaging and how the whole thing is designed. And the second thing is the length of the commercial itself, right? And how do you know whether it should just be like a 10-second thing that you post or it should be like a longer, like let's say 1 minute or something. So how is the length determined and what is like some guidelines for that? So first, let's talk about like copy and content for video content.
Now, with regards to like DVCs, yes, over the last few particular years, like DVC content is much more easier for brands to even do right now. The kind of expenses that go into just making a digital video ad is
Mm.
cheaper
Yeah,
compared to a larger full-fledged photo shoot, I mean shoot that goes across a nice proper brand video.
yeah.
DVC also considering the kind of way people are consuming content, right? So it's become more accessible for people to make these kind of videos and get people to do these videos as well.
Mm.
So brands are approaching into that trend because people love it. The kind of content that's made, the fun videos that have been made. Again, so, for taking Zomato's video that they did, Zomato versus Zomato.
Mm.
Again, that's the whole communication what was being put across. So that floated very well because of that video that they did.
Mm.
How they created the banter, how communication was taken across over there, right? So DVC content, I would say, works very well. Now with the planning part of it, it's always what you're trying to communicate. You need to understand what is my base approach, where am I taking this communication, what am I trying to convey to my audience. Without that in place, right, you will end up making, you might give the best script, but that is not what you want to communicate at that point. Maybe I want to talk about uh, maybe I'm talking about introducing my brand in a different way. Rather than that, if I made a video about milestones that the brand has achieved, that's a
Mm.
very different video. I'm not doing that. I'm doing a storytelling approach.
Yeah.
So understanding what needs to be communicated is essential. Then taking that forward into scripting it. It's essential for you to understand that people, any person right now has a very small capacity of keep grabbing attention to of a user. It's very small right now. You need to have that hook in the first 5 seconds itself, within the first 3 seconds, to be honest. That hook needs to be created, understanding your right hook for your video,
Yeah.
how to begin with, then expanding it slowly, elaborating, and then kind of coming with the final year. Instead of making one long video where you spent a lot of money in making one brand photo shoot, right? A nice TVC. You do multiple small DVCs and take communication, channelize and experiment. And like you can take one route, explain it in 5 different ways, and people understand what you're trying to say.
Mm.
So that's very essential. I think shorter video content with single communication and CTA that's going across is like the best mix to kind of get that awareness and recall in the audience.
Mm.
So I think that is something that I've always followed. Hook, a good CTA that ends,
Mm.
and recall with by expanding it into 3 4 things.
Mm. Got it. Yeah, perfect. I think it very nicely covers structure of content. What about the length? So how was that planned? Because the three things that you mentioned, the structure that you mentioned can be covered, I think extreme, if it's someone extremely great, they can cover it in 10 seconds, but an elaborate version is also covering it in like it's a 1 minute, 1.5 minute or something also, right? So how do you decide on how
I
long?
would say 10 second, like considering my hook, my in between ka content and my outro, you need to have that outro as well. That outro itself again takes like 5 6 seconds. That needs to have all the CTAs. I'm available on this platform, all that needs to be there.
Yeah.
Now that needs to be covered. I would say 10 seconds might be a very small video. If I'm just doing a small reel, I'm like, hey, this is what I am. That's fine. But if I'm doing a DVC where I'm spending a little money, I would like to keep it 15, 20, 30 seconds.
Mm.
Like small 30-second snippets, because then I can use that on Google, for non-skippable ads, multiple ways that I can use that entire thing. So that is essentially, I would say, I would ideally prefer to keep a video more than 20 seconds.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that covers everything. Okay, we'll talk about one of the things that you mentioned earlier that I wanted to touch upon is how much of marketing relies on analytics, right? And understanding and assessing different channels, assessing different campaigns, being able to look at data and understand what is working, what is not working, right? And they say marketing is both an art and a science. An art for obviously all the creative things that go behind it, and the science is all the analytics and the data that needs to be worked at. So how much of the role is like in terms of what you've seen, right? And I'm sure this varies as well, but in general, if you were to talk about a marketing role, how much of it is creativity and intuition, and what is that side of things? If you can just highlight on what are some of those creative aspects and how much of it relies on the intuition, and what are the data and analytics aspects, and how important do those become? How good do you need to be at them? So we'll start off with talking about creativity and intuition.
So, with regards to this, right, this is something that I've always told my team at Moshi Moshi here, everywhere. Okay, that it's people sometimes say I'm the most creative person. People sometimes say I'm very data oriented. But they need to understand that there is a balance. You can't be a marketer if you're just creative. You can't be a marketer if you're just analytical.
Yeah.
There is a certain balance that needs to be there where you need to be able to tell yourself that okay, this is a creative idea, but this will not float because this is not the results that I can expect out of this. So that needs to be there. Otherwise, we would need like multiple people, one full creative team, one full analytical team.
Yeah.
So that base level, at least that base level thing should be present in each individual to understand that okay, this is something that will not float. In terms of creativity, right, there are certain things that you need to understand, which is right now, if you see with the whole expansion of the AI that's coming across, AIs are giving you content model structures, AIs are giving you everything. But what AI is lacking is the ethical or the emotional aspect which you can bring, the psychology of a user. Currently, that is where we are strong. Everyone's all having these debates over there, right? Ki, oh, AI aa gaya, I will not have a job, I will not be doing this. But you bring out that emotional aspect which AIs are still not able to do.
Yeah.
You need to understand, we need to understand that creativity will requires a lot of thinking out of the box kind of an approach, but also that emotional balance of understanding the user or the psychology of the TG that you're targeting. So that kind of makes you build the entire thing over there. So creativity comes across in different ways, but if it's not being targeted towards the right people, it doesn't make sense. That's one thing. Then moving towards the analytics part. So previously, one of the companies that I was working with at Moshi Moshi, right? We gave them ideas. We asked them for previous data that they've done. They had some ideas, okay, which was very nice. I really liked some of the creative ideas that were there, but none of them got results. You had 46 followers. What are the results? I see these ideas, but this idea did not translate to something in terms of results. So that's where they lacked in analyzing their own content or what was happening. You cannot have 200 posts and have 46 followers. You need to understand that there it's something that's going off. So then you kind of reiterate, you kind of see what didn't work out right. Is this my content or the communication? How am I communicating? Am I talking to my TG right? Am I using the right hashtags? Am I talking to I'm talking in the right way? What am I communicating about? Is this an off period topic? So analytics and data kind of works. People think social media does not have any analytics. Trust me, there is a lot in terms of that. Understanding from one post, if my reach is coming down consistently for this particular content pillar, who am I communicating to? Is this person not relating to this communication? Okay, let's change it up. Let's differentiate that communication. That is something that goes into this. So analytics is also there while being creative as well. So it's a balance between the two.
Yeah. I think perfectly put. Yeah. Okay, we'll do a final couple of questions. I think, like in general, the last two are just from your journey, and it's a couple of fun questions. But before that, in general, for someone who's looking for a career in marketing, right, and especially doing so without pursuing an MBA and not having like a degree such a which you also didn't complete, and you're still like doing really well in the field. So what do you recommend for students in terms of let's look at the learning tools at their disposal, right? One is on the theoretical side, you have courses and certifications, and on the practical side, you have internships and projects that you can do. So what recommendations should you have broadly for newbies in the field with leveraging these platforms? So first, let's start with talking about courses and certifications and what recommendations you would have about that.
See, with courses and recommendations, majority of my learning has been through the platforms itself that I was working on. I did a course on Facebook. I learned a course on Google. Did Google certification courses, Facebook certified courses, and all of that. But then I realized that I wanted to also do communication. So then, while exploring, I came across HubSpot. HubSpot has some amazing content, understanding whatever it is. But while understanding, I would always recommend that people apply these things. The things that I've learned, I've struggled a lot to apply, to understand and make it come across. But don't be afraid to make mistakes. Apply the knowledge that you learn, and you'll be able to take things forward from there on. So that kind of works with regards to the tools part of it. Now, with regards to, sorry, which was asked?
Internships, projects.
The internships. Yeah. So go for internships which are mainly in startups rather than going to a big company, right? Big company, you will be put across only doing one X thing. They will put you in just one thing where you're like, okay, you're only going to work on this. Startups let you do everything. I worked in operations, I worked in marketing, research, social media, SEO, every aspect of different things, even designing. For a fact that I had to learn Illustrator because that one day this designer was not there and I had to change designs.
Yeah.
So get into startups, learn, because that way you'll be also, when you're leading a team, you'll also know things about other things that happen in different years. So I would say startups are the best places to start. And Bangalore, number of startups are so many.
For
So you can go anywhere.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Yeah, I think very, very well put as well. Personally, I can attest to that as well with startups and how much it can do. Yeah. Okay, final couple of questions. And for this last but one question, and this is something we like asking everyone, right? Which is and something that we are also trying to do, mission that's very close to us, which is what has been the role of dialogue-based education in your life, dialogue and experience-based education? Because probably those perspectives that were offered to you by people around you, interactions that you had, things that you picked up from them that really changed the way you thought about things, not just from like a professional perspective, but also personally adapting it to your life, right? So that's the question. That's what we want to ask. And under that, first is how did this whole thing, or how did dialogue-based education help you form a better inspiration for yourself and more realistic expectations that you could set for yourself? So that's the first thing.
Now, I feel like, based on this entire thing with dialogue-based education, right? It's very essential because I, as a matter of fact, would not have chosen this as an entire career option until and unless my director at that point did not stand out and tell me that, hey, listen, man, you're good at this. This is how you need to do it. You need that inspiration, that voice, because sometimes it's not enough as to what you think. You need that kind of validation, and I think a lot of people miss out on opportunities because they're kind of not told about other things. Then they don't know about these things. Somebody needs to kind of, this is what I like about CoDot. You guys are trying to bring out these stories because I know for a fact that if at that point, I would have heard these kind of stories. If maybe somebody just getting into this entire thing in marketing, I would have definitely started my journey earlier. I wouldn't have done my MTech. I did 2 years of MTech, 2 years of master structural engineering, 4 years that I've done other things. I would have done this in a whole different way.
Yeah.
And that change did come across only because of that director of mine telling me that this is good. This is what you're meant to do. So I think that's very important for people. It motivates you. It kind of gives you a lot more clarity. It's more of the line key. I'm not thinking that, is this just me? Somebody else has also told this to me. So I'm like, yeah. And somebody's told me that this is possible. So why not do it?
Yeah. And the second thing is, how did it help you in terms of building? And I think you mentioned clarity of thought also, right? So how did it help you create like better mental models or just a better world view of things and realize that, okay, this is how this works and this is how I probably need to orient myself. So how did it help you in that way and creating that frameworks for yourself?
So the thing is, you kind of get these questions, right? Oh, abhi we have thoda. Sorry.
No worries.
Yeah. So the thing is, with regards to all these people that were a part of my life who helped me with this, even at the internship place, I remember the CTO over there, Kush Agarwal. Yeah, he told me this thing कि भाई तो एमटेक क्यों कर रहा है, तू वापस आएगा ये फील्ड में.
Mm.
And I was like, नहीं नहीं पापा ने बोल दिया है all these things. But he told me then कि there is a spark in you which is about this. You understand users, you understand psychology of people, and you've built things, you've done a nice job.
Mm.
And very rarely do we come across people like that. So that helped me, motivated me to kind of consider it at that point. Even
Mm.
when I was doing that whole structural engineering job, I was dissatisfied for the
Mm.
first 6 months, like I told you. So that dissatisfaction was only because I also felt that I needed to do something better. I
Mm.
could do something else. And when the director over there also told me the same thing, right? It kind of made me want to explore and learn these things.
Mm.
It takes courage to kind of change things over here because of the mentality. Only now, after so many years of struggling, right? Now my family, my dad and my brother, everybody else, my aunts, my uncles, everyone is like finally like, oh, Moise is doing something nice. Not
Mm.
bad. So
Yeah.
there's that. Until then, it was like that boy. He left this beautiful career of doing buildings
Yeah.
to be up to. So trust me, it's very impactful. It helps you understand things and take things in a better way. And you kind of understand who are these people who have guided you in these things, and you understand what kind of people you need to look out for, and you set expectations of role models.
Yeah.
Very few role models that have kept expectations, so
Yes.
that kind of motivates you to want to be like that.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Beautiful, very nicely put. Okay, one final question, and this is just like a fun question to conclude, right? Which is, if you could go back to your college days and your BTech days more specifically, and
Hmm.
do something differently, what would that be? And we'll look again two different contexts over here. So first is, if you could go back to your first year of college and change something, what would you do? And another one is, if you could go back to your final year of college and change something, what would that be? So start off with first year.
My first year of college, I would tell myself ki, you know what, all those event planning and everything which you were like, no, the entire forum for civil construction and design is important. Movies, you should have totally gone for those forum events. Opportunity when people were looking out for internships with Red Bull and all, right? So a couple of friends of mine were going for it, and I didn't go for it because I was like, no, that's not even required for me. I don't need it. I would have loved to do an internship with Red Bull and get those free Red Bulls.
So perfect,
And
yeah.
the final year, if I was in my final year, I would tell myself, ki, Muiz, are you still happy about this?
Mm.
I think I always knew that I wasn't completely happy with this whole civil engineering. I mean, it's just grades. I was book smart also. So I have a photographic memory.
Mm.
So I could pass my exams and get good grades. So that
Mm.
was fine. But I would tell myself, ki, you're not happy with this. You
Mm.
shouldn't go with this. You should change now. That's something that I would tell myself.
Wow, brilliant. Like, do you actually have a photographic memory? That's
I mean, trust me, when I meet you the next time, I mean, I do. I remember like कि ये वाले पेज पे मैंने ये side ऐसे लिखा था. A
wow.
lot of the times I'm always like, see, look in my diary. I've written something there. I've doodled this one thing over there.
Uh,
So I'll know कि when I was having that meeting, this is what I had doodled. This is where we have the notes of that meeting.
hmm.
So it's
Wow.
something like that. Not a complete. It's ruined a lot over years with age.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
back then it was much better.
Yeah, yeah, brilliant. Yeah, sorry, I just got distracted. I just had to ask that, and it just fascinated by what he said. Oh, cool. Okay, awesome. I think that brings us to the end of all our questions. Moise, thank you so much for doing this with us. I think thoroughly enjoyed this one. One of the better podcasts that I've actually done. I think it's an art to sort of put answers in a very concise way and yet deliver a lot of impact and a lot of insight in them. And I think you definitely did that, because this is one of the very few podcasts which ends in like 75 minutes for me. So, and with the amount of questions and amount of things we covered. So yeah, I mean, I really, really enjoyed it. So again, thank you so much for doing this with us.
I
And
enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. Enjoyed it. It was amazing sharing my experience with y'all.
yeah,
And I hope somebody over there realizes who's in their final year that this is not what they're meant for, and then changes their
yeah,
stream now.
yeah. Let's hope. Let's hope. For sure. Yeah. Yeah. Again, thank you so much. I think it's great catching up with you. Great conversation.
Thanks, Pawan. Thank you for having me. It was great.
Yeah.